Ventura County.
Your third one of the day
That's right.
for a Friday afternoon. Thanks for sticking with us.
Well, I find these focus groups are surprisingly, I shouldn't be surprised because this is a project I think is going really well, but we've been getting a lot out of them. We were just having an internal team meeting and saying how, we've been getting a lot more information than we were even expecting. So this has been very helpful, and hopefully today's meeting will be the same.
Great. Who else was invited for this one?
I think, well, everybody was invited to all the focus groups.
Oh, okay.
As people were asking for calendar invites, people also let me know that they would put it on their own calendars. So we do have 3 people that asked for calendar invites for this one.
Okay.
Should I wait a couple more minutes to see if anyone else joins?
Yeah, or if you want to get started, we can do like brief introductions.
Okay.
Wait a couple minutes for people to trickle in.
All right. Well, let's see. I'll wait another minute because it is right after lunch and people may be doing this.
Hi, Ilse, would you be able to send Amanda the list of attendees this went out to, or the invitees, just so she has it for her information?
Yeah, the list that went out to everybody.
Sure, if it's just easier to do the one list, so that way she knows who from Ventura County was invited.
Okay, yeah, I'll send over the list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who do I need to bug?
No worries, I'll send it over in a bit.
Thank you.
Mike, I made you the host for the meeting if you wanna try and sharing your screen and getting the PowerPoint set up.
Hang on one second. I will share my screen. Remember how to do that. There we go. Okay. Is that visible?
Yes, we can see the presentation screen.
Okay. Good. I'm having a little difficulty here because I need to sure get the screen back, and I don't know where it went. Why is it doing this? Here we go.
Requirements to run the equipment.
Okay. Oh, okay. Shall I get started, or are we waiting for other folks?
I think this is it.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and get started.
Well, okay, let's do it. So, Amanda, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'll do my best to represent my whole county.
Excellent. Well, thank you for rising to that occasion. Have you attended any of these focus groups? Okay.
Not the focus groups, but I've been participating in the meetings leading up to this point.
Yeah. No, you're obviously look familiar to me, but I wasn't sure. We've had several days of focus groups. So anyway.
Yeah, no, this is the first one. We are in the throes of reviewing the draft comprehensive transportation plan, so I've been buried in that.
Fair enough. All right. Well, now you can have another thing to get completely enmeshed in. So I think we can kind of skip introduction since we all kind of know each other, right? So, okay. So let's talk about the project itself. And we're going to talk about the project objectives. And you probably have some familiarity with these. I'll just, as a quick refresher, what we're really focusing on is the unincorporated rural areas between the urban areas, and especially for interregional travelers. And that includes light duty vehicles as well as freight and goods movement, as well as regional transit. And then we're focusing on areas of social equity concerns, making sure that the recommendations that we come up with are equitable and meet the needs of multiple users. And those include traditionally underserved populations such as multifamily residents and lower income populations. We want to make sure that the investments and recommendations and the policies can really help move the region forward with regard to zero emission vehicles. And then last but not least, position the region for funding opportunities. And so we've been getting a lot of really good input on all of these topics over the last several days. So the project has a website, and hopefully you've had a chance to get on here. Hopefully you've had a chance to download the existing editions report that's up there. And it's a great read. I highly recommend it. Check it out. And then the other great resource is Social Pinpoint. And this Ilse has kind of the leader on this. And it has information. It's an interactive tool for gathering information from the public. And so what we're doing is we're going to be taking information from Social Pinpoint that we get from the public and from the stakeholders, information that we're getting from the focus groups that we've been conducting the last couple of days, information from a big data analytics platform called Streetlight, which basically identifies travel behavior and how that leads to where chargers get located. And then we, as the consultant team, will kind of pull this all together. And so this is the input form for Social Pinpoint. In terms of what's going on throughout the 6-county region, this is a high-level overview of the existing chargers that are there today. As you can see, Ventura County has the highest number of level 2 chargers and the second highest of DC fast chargers, but not nearly as many Tesla destination chargers, which is sort of their equivalent of level 2 chargers and slightly faster than typical level 2. And then also quite a few Tesla superchargers, which are very high speed chargers. So all in all, basically Ventura County is pretty much tied with San Luis Obispo County for the highest number of chargers throughout any of the study area counties. So in terms of taking a closer look, most of the chargers are located in the urban areas in the area around on the south part of the county where most of the population is, the closer to the water. This shows you the more of a detailed breakdown of the chargers. What we've tried to do is really look at from multiple different lenses, because Tesla chargers are different than other chargers because they're specifically, or at least have been specifically for Teslas, whereas all the other chargers support the rest of the rest of the electric vehicle products that are coming out. In the future, we're going to see a lot more other types of vehicles than Tesla. Tesla's really dominated electromobility in North America, but we're now starting to see much more from other auto manufacturers as well. So a big focus of the project is the areas within a mile of the freeway corridor interchanges, and those are the areas that are shown in blue on this map. Again, the areas outside the incorporated areas is where we're focusing. So that gives a pretty high level overview. And before we switch over to questions, do you have any questions for us about either the purpose of this project, the goals and objectives, or on what we found so far in our existing conditions analysis?
No, I think it's pretty clear, but can you go back real quick, the map one? I just noticed that it's, oh, okay, it's just because I do see the 101. I noticed the Highway 1 was marked, but not as the 101 there. It was just caught my eye. So
I'm assuming that the 101 continues north as the one along the coast. Is that how that works?
Well, I always think of it as being the one. I get there are places where it's contiguous, but it doesn't really matter. It just struck me. I noticed the one and I didn't see the 101 just because it has different striping. It's fine.
Great. And one of the things to be aware of is that we're looking at alternative fuel designated corridors, because those are the ones that are, the priorities for alternative fuels like zero emission vehicle charging infrastructure. Okay, so what we've been talking about in these focus groups, and we'd love to get the input from you in Ventura County, is we have a pretty good analysis based on data that we've downloaded from the Alternatives Fuel Data Center as well as from PlugShare. But what that tells us is what is there today, what chargers are either under construction or are existing or even under repair. But what we don't know is what's planned in the future that we should be aware of, because that's important context as we develop this plan. So tell us, Amanda, with your crystal ball, what is going on? What is being planned in Ventura County?
I was really hoping you would tell me that. No, I'm just kidding. So I would say that the best folks to answer that question, though, would be at the county, in the Regional Energy Alliance. The Heather Allen sits in the county CEO's office. Because they're really tracking this much more closely than we are. What I can tell you is that we have a Solutions for Congested Corridors application that's going in sometime soon that we're partnering with Caltrans on, and it does include some new fast charging stations at the 3 train stations in Ventura, Oxnard, and Camarillo, but that's just a small number, 6 total.
Are those DC fast chargers or level 2 chargers?
Oh, I don't remember the
Yeah.
detail of that, and I'm not even sure we were that detailed in our request.
Okay.
It's kind of like an icing on a much larger project cake that includes some dual tracking and major bike trail investments, and it's part of a suite of projects. But those are the ones I know about. As far as what other, that's not something that we've really been tracking that closely.
Okay. So do you have a contact information for her that you could share with us?
Sure. Yeah, her name is Heather Allen. Let me see if I've got her email address. But yeah,
if you could just plop that in her email in the chat, that would be great.
yes, thank
And
you.
what was that location? I missed that part.
Oh, just at the 3 Metrolink train stations at East Montalvo, East Ventura Montalvo station, then the Oxnard station and the Camarillo station. And
So typically, now, apologies, is this commuter rail or is this more like Amtrak?
So it's both. Those stations serve both commuter and Amtrak.
Okay.
But specifically, those are the ones that do have Metrolink, because we have some role. But yes.
Okay, so where would people be commuting to and from using those stations?
Well, they're typically they would most likely be folks going into LA from Ventura County
Okay,
for commute purposes.
got it. Okay, thank you. So typically, if they're commuting or they're taking the long distance train, they would probably be parked all day, which means that level 2 charging would be more appropriate than, say, DC fast charging. Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, what do you have information or insights on who else to talk to within the county or within any of the cities regarding kind of what's being planned? Because we're interested, even though again the focus of the project is on the rural areas for regional travel. It's helpful to know where within urban areas future chargers are planned, just so that provides the context for our own recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the EV Ready Blueprint is probably going to be the best resource. I think I've shared that with you guys before,
Right.
but Heather's group manages that.
Okay.
And then as far as in the cities, Oxnard is developing a sustainable transportation plan and a climate action plan that are both in the pretty close to being completed. So you might talk to Debbie O'Leary at the city of Oxnard about whether those incorporate EV charging. And then kind of East County, the city of
Wait,
Thousand
do you have
Oaks.
a contact for Debbie O'Leary by any chance?
Of course, yeah.
Great.
I was just thinking off the top of my head to get you a list. And then I'm gonna pull up the EV Ready Blueprint. And then, yeah, like on the East County side, probably the city of Thousand Oaks would be my best guess for where they would be investing. But I'll pull up some contacts for you.
Okay, great. And what about Simi Valley?
I don't know. I just don't know whether what they have going on there, to be honest.
All right. Any contacts there that we should speak to?
Yeah, I can get you a list of contacts.
Great.
Just happen to think we don't really, But yeah, I can send these offline. I hate to, just while I'm searching for emails here.
Okay. Well, you're on the spot because you're our only
Oh.
member of the focus group.
And I was really hoping that I could just like listen in to the discussion today.
Well,
I'm kidding.
we are recording this, so we can send you a recording if you want to listen.
I'm just teasing.
So the next question is, can you think of any incentives that would be helpful? And if not, if there's others who might be able to, that could be able to answer that question, we'd be more than happy to reach out to them.
Yeah, I would suggest that Heather at the Regional Energy Alliance is probably the best person to talk to.
Okay. And so she'd probably be the person to answer the next question, which is, are there disincentives that currently exist that we should be addressing?
I mean, I think the kind of the biggest disincentive or, you know, impediment or barrier is just the kind of perceived lack of energy available. It's not a Ventura County specific issue. It's just you know, what's all this EV charging going to do to the grid? That's the question or complaint that we hear most from the public or just in general.
Oh, interesting. So it's not access to charging itself, but it's
kind of that like broader, you know, concern about the what it just does to the grid and you know.
Is that because I don't know, was it weeks ago or a month ago or so, there was a situation where there was a lot of news reports about the utilities asking EV drivers to not charge during peak demand times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like a symptom of the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, because when you raised that, I thought, well, compared to at least elsewhere in the study area, Ventura County is pretty well supplied with existing chargers. I mean, we're not comparing it with the population, which obviously is probably a little higher density than elsewhere, but so it's not necessarily a lack of access to charging. It's really lack of potential or limitations on the total grid's capacity to serve the growth in demand driven by uses such as electric vehicles.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that that's a valid concern. It's just that is the concern that I have heard.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think even if it's not technically accurate, and it largely isn't with some exceptions, there are some grid constrained areas. And we met yesterday with PG&E. We have yet to meet with Southern California Edison. Unfortunately, we tried to get them. I invited them, but they didn't send anybody. So I would like to have a follow-up for two reasons. One, to address that particular concern, but also to address the questions about incentives. And one of the things that the utilities that were in attendance, which were PG&E as well as Central Coast Clean Energy, they have an incredible buffet of incentives and rebates and whatnot to help this. So they're really, you know, leaders, in my opinion, in terms of support for EV charging. And I know that Southern California Edison has also been a leader historically. I haven't worked with them, and you know, we would like to engage them in this project because they're a key, you know, they cover this particular part of the study area.
Yeah, you know, SoCal Edison has a new government affairs person who is part of this Ventura County Leadership Academy that I belong to. So let me see if I can I just saw the announcement recently.
Great. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that's really helpful.
This was just something I saw in passing, but I'm sure I can find it again.
While you're looking for that, the next question up is, in addition to funding support, are there other things, other interventions that could be done that we should be thinking about?
So just this last week, there was a Clean Air Summit here in hosted by Gold Coast Transit District, and VCTC was one of the sponsors. Their focus, interestingly, was not on electric vehicles, but rather on hydrogen charging. And there's a lot of interest, particularly in the transit space and in the heavy duty space with the Port of Hueneme on infrastructure that would support hydrogen charging. So the focus was more on that than on electric vehicles. But that reminds me that another set of contacts or folks that you would want to probably talk to is at the Port of Hueneme. They're a major importer of vehicles and exporter. I can't remember I think they're one of the larger import-export ports in the nation. So that would be another good.
How do you spell that? Port of,
Yeah.
Port of Hueneme, Hueneme.
I always wanted to know how to spell that. I hear that reference all the time, but I don't know how to even look it up because I don't know how
Oh, yeah.
to spell it.
So yeah, Hueneme. And they're owned by the Oxnard Harbor District, which is the actual government entity that operates and owns the port.
Thank you. So that's in Oxnard, I guess.
It is. Well, it's in Port Hueneme.
Okay. So, but it's kind of I guess you could call this at the extreme southern tip of the study area.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Here we go. So I just found the SoCal Edison contact.
Great.
But yeah, so well, I'll give you SoCal Edison's, but then I'll also give you the port's contact. They have a really great environmental manager who's really visionary and interested in charging infrastructure. So I think he would be a really good person to talk to.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, we're getting involved increasingly in port electrification as well. So it's always good to build that network.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned, the interest in hydrogen, and it is a form of electric vehicle. So we consider hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles as well.
Okay.
It's just they don't use batteries. They use compressed or liquefied hydrogen.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
And that is a particularly important technology especially for freight, especially for long haul Class 8 type trucks, as well as you mentioned, regional transit.
Okay.
It's a little different because the energy density is so much greater than batteries. The distance between hydrogen fueling infrastructure is about 10 times that of electric vehicle battery charging. So, under like the EPA's alternative fuel corridor designations, it's every 500 miles as opposed to every 50 miles. And one of the nice things about this area is there are hydrogen fueling stations in and around LA. There are not very many in the United States, but this is one of the places.
This is one of the places, yeah. Well, and Gold Coast Transit District has some plans to actually have its own hydrogen plant.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like long range plans, but that's the direction that they're going. And they've talked with the port about some partnerships on, having a charging station, or even possibly to have public charging stations there. They have a new facility that just opened up maybe 3 or 4 years ago in Oxnard, just off of the 101 between Rice and Rose, to pretty central along the 101 there.
Great. Okay, cool.
Trying to find Natalie's contact information, but I found her. I'll probably have to get back to you with that one.
Okay, well, if you can, that would really be appreciated.
Sure.
You have a good Rolodex or whatever they're called nowadays.
Yeah, I may not have the answers, but I have a lot of names.
Well, as they say, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. So
Yeah, that's right.
thanks for bringing that, because there's any single agency is going to know everything. So,
Right.
okay. All right. Let's see. I'll go through the other remaining questions. So we've talked about incentives and disincentives. Is there anything that you can think of regarding what else could be done in addition to funding support?
I mean, with any development in our county, SOAR and the guidelines for orderly development and all the other, kind of unique land use constraints always come up. But I would think that is most applicable from a charging perspective. When you think about truck parking, we recently did a freight corridor study for Ventura County, and there are only 9 legal truck parking spaces in the entire county. 9.
Wow.
The closest ones otherwise, which is interesting because we do have an international port and a lot of industrial, uses. But when you think about the heavy duty trucks and medium and heavy duty vehicles that are going to need to charge, relatively soon, there's no place for them to park legally and safely and charge. And so I think that where you can integrate new charging infrastructure with parking infrastructure for trucks, that's, I think, a good way to go. But finding places for that type of activity within the context of our broader land use planning is difficult.
Did the freight study identify any?
Not specific locations, but it does have recommendations to continue to work on the truck parking issue. And I honestly haven't looked. I know the state completed its truck parking study, but I haven't looked at it to kind of line up, because we finished ours before the state finished their truck parking study.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they identified locations, but that's, I think, an area for additional work to be done.
Okay, so Sarah, make a note of that. I think it would be worthwhile for us to take a look at both studies, both the Ventura counties as well as the states, because I think you're right. It absolutely makes sense to add charging capacity where the truck parking is. One of the ways that typically a truck would charge while at a depot loading and unloading, because they're dwelling anyway. And then the next best place would be probably at truck stops, because there are services there for truck drivers. And then the third would be if there's just, additional truck parking. So all three would be very appropriate places. What's different about truck electrification, which not unlike trans electrification, is that the batteries are huge on trucks. And so the electrical loads tend to be much larger because you have bigger batteries and a higher concentration of heavy duty electric vehicles that have a very limited dwell time. So you really need to bring in high power charging. So one of the things that's happened recently, and you may be aware of this, is the megawatt charging standard is becoming standardized under CHARN. And so now you've got these really powerful chargers that have massive grid impacts. And so that's going to be a really significant challenge potentially, where the grid is not, that is an area, I think, where people have, it's the grid itself has the power. The challenge is how the grid is structured geographically. Is there sufficient power in concentrated areas to meet certain peak load demands of specific charging infrastructure, such as, a major truck facility, a port, or a bus depot?
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I know this is definitely an interest area for the port in particular, but we've got, you know, a whole host of other industrial users and folks who would be interested in that. So
Okay. All right.
and of course the ag community, you know, we have our economy here in Ventura County is kind of like a three-legged stool with the you know, agriculture being one of those three legs. And so with the transportation requirements of our ag sector, that's another important sort of piece of that, medium and heavy duty trucking. But I just put in the chat a link to the freight corridor study.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, contacts for the port. I think Giles was already on your list because when I searched for his email address, it came up on the list that Elsa sent earlier. So
Okay.
he probably
Great.
just wasn't available today.
It happens. It's a Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have any advice regarding more electric vehicle travel, sort of incentives or issues that we should be aware of, or ways to reduce existing barriers, such as some of the ones we've been discussing?
And I think it's something that could also be integrated into our housing discussions here in the county. You know, Ventura County's most recent population projections show that by 2050, we're actually going to decrease our population. But with an increase, so there's the average household size is going down, and so we actually need more housing to serve a relatively stable population. And then our population is also aging pretty dramatically. Currently, we have about 1 in 10 residents over the age of 70 in Ventura County, but by 2040, we're projected to have 20%, 21% of our population in that retirement age.
So in terms of
So
land,
there's a lot of discussion about how, in terms of, go ahead, in terms of land use.
oh, no, well, finish your thought and then I'll ask my question.
Oh, just, you know, so we need more housing to meet the demands of for a smaller population. And housing production in our county is very limited. There's still a lot of, you know, concern and opposition to any housing production. So there's a lot of work and energy being put into trying to facilitate housing. And so, you know, in terms of, I think, you know, because we do have these urban growth boundaries and, you know, pretty well-defined land use planning here and constrained land use planning here in Ventura County, particularly in the unincorporated areas, you know, there will be increasing density. There will have to be increasing density in our cities. And so that might be an opportunity for meeting charging demand at, you know, multi-family housing, or in the kind of infill projects that we're likely to see here in the county. But from an unincorporated area standpoint, you know, it also strikes me that you would need to work with Ventura County on identifying areas that would be appropriate for charging. And so you're probably looking at the existing community areas as being really the only places that would be viable, because we have otherwise, you know, any area outside of the existing cities is likely subject to SOAR, the Save Open Space and Agricultural Resources ordinances. And then the wildlife corridor protections and all of the other things that that guide and constrain growth and development in our county. And so I think so if you are to add charging infrastructure in unincorporated areas, it would have to be closely coordinated with the county and try to find areas within those existing community areas like Piru. That's the only place it's going to be viable.
Oh, so tell us a little bit about Piru.
Piru is on the
And also,
126.
how do you spell that?
Piru,
Okay, thank
and
you.
it's on the State Route 126, just before the LA Ventura County line. Just east of Fillmore. And that's just one example of an unincorporated existing community area where some development is allowed. But that might be one target area. And around, there's some existing community areas in Ojai, like in Oakview. That's out on the 33. Trying to think. Oak Park, Newberry Park out on the 126. Those would also be, there are some existing community areas that are within the county of Ventura. I'll see if I can find the list.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, because, you're right. I mean, one of the challenges that, I'm, as a planner, I'm struggling with is, our scope is to focus on interregional travel in urban areas, in rural areas, and addressing the unique needs of disadvantaged populations, often are multifamily dwellers. And so multifamily housing should be in cities, and it usually is. So they're sort of, I wouldn't say they're in conflict, but they're at least going in different directions.
That's that is, you're right. And that's why a place like Piru actually is an excellent target for deployment of these resources.
Yeah.
And
So-
actually Oakview, I'm trying to remember the names of the other little towns up there. The home of Johnny Cash. Out
Nashville?
No, the actual home of Johnny Cash is out on the 33 on the way to Ojai, and the name of the town is jumping out of my head. I think their house was even recently for sale.
I bet
Anyway,
it didn't have
it'll
a charger.
I see James joined us and he's got his hand up. He's like, Amanda, stop talking.
Hi, James, welcome.
Quite the opposite, Amanda. You are always a invaluable source of information. And I apologize for joining so late. Unfortunately, when this invitation arrived, it was exactly in parallel with another meeting that I was already obligated to attend. So I just got out of that meeting a few minutes ago. I'm sure you folks were along here. So I guess I'll catch up however might best be possible. But I wanted to actually just really hone in on what Amanda was just referencing. I am definitely familiar with the 126 in the context of another study that I had the opportunity to work with Ventura County on. And I'm just kind of curious, are we only talking about in the context of passenger vehicles, or is infrastructure in the context of heavy duty vehicles part of the focus of this discussion? Because the
Yes.
126
Oh.
would be interested in that way.
Okay. No, we've been actually talking before you joined a little bit about the Port of Hueneme and the sort of the interest in hydrogen, which is of course the primary, might sense, interim fuel for heavy duty vehicles until battery technology improves to the point where it makes more sense for long distance. So yes, we're looking at both. We're looking basically at interregional travel in the unincorporated areas, and as well as social equity concerns. Social equity largely means meeting the needs of those who don't have access to at-home charging. And those are often apartment dwellers or multifamily dwellers. And so those are kind of interesting challenges, especially in the unincorporated areas. But yes, by all means, we are interested in freight and regional transit as well.
And James, before you joined, we were talking about parking and the freight corridor study, and if there are opportunities to align charging infrastructure for heavy duty vehicles with the with truck parking provision.
Yeah, that was actually, I believe, and I don't have those documents open at this point in time, but I recall there being some indication of, if there were such opportunities to sort of accomplish multiple objectives that might help with the prospects of, achieving either or, because obviously there are a lot of variables associated with trying to figure out the truck parking challenge. And, in the context of the zero emission vehicle infrastructure challenge, yeah, I mean, any scenario where there is the possibility of actually making progress in both at the same time, that would certainly be an awesome idea. And obviously, we would envision that, that would likely need to involve, the private sector in some regard. I don't know that the land would probably be publicly owned, but I mean, if there's land that, the commission is aware of or the county is aware of, I mean, sure. I mean, it would certainly all be very interesting.
Okay. And I'm sorry, James, what is your role again?
So I work in District 7. This is Caltrans District 7. So the counties in the state of California that District 7 is assigned to, if you will, are Los Angeles and Ventura County. And so I know that, if I'm recalling correctly, most of the geography of this effort is north of Ventura County. But the fact that you folks are recognizing, the benefit and the advantage of including Ventura County, makes it possible for me to have a particular interest, because it's, a part of the state that I'm plugged into as well. So we know that you're looking at a much larger footprint overall, but to the extent that this effort is going to, result in some specific proposals or recommendations associated with Ventura County, we are definitely very interested in understanding that and, providing whatever we might be able to in terms of contributions in that regard.
Great, excellent.
And
So-
I finally remembered it's Casita Springs. That's the name of the little town up in the Ojai Valley that I was trying to remember. So Casita Springs, Oakview area would be another, on the 33 was kind of like a good target.
Thank you. So I don't know if you can you see my screen? I just reshared it again. Oops. So oops. These are the kind of the questions we've been discussing, and Amanda, who has been flying solo from Ventura County's focus group up until you joined us, has actually been, I think, doing a great job and giving us all kinds of resources. So she's been doing a great job, and so these are the things that we're basically trying to get some input on, so that we benefit from local perspectives and find out what's going on. So if you can think of any responses to this from perhaps Caltrans perspective, that would certainly be helpful. And also if there's any, and one of the things that Amanda's been doing is giving us referrals to both various planning efforts as well as different folks within the region who might have some insights, and so which we can then do follow up with. So if
Thank
any-
you. Yeah, I would never say anything other than the fact that Amanda is a tremendous resource, as well as being a outstanding member of any team that she's on. So
Thank you,
you're
James. You're
certainly
much too nice.
no. I just call it as it is, actually. So I'm just giving you the due acknowledgement that you should receive. So yeah. So I guess. Mike, to your point, and I apologize again for not being able to, be a part of the discussion that's already occurred. I don't know, certainly just looking at these questions and, at the spur of the moment here, I don't think anything is definitely popping up that, is like some sort of news flash that would be specifically, able to progress on any of these, but if you guys are going to be sharing whatever presentation material you've already gone over, then I can look at that after and see if anything comes to mind.
And I just,
Okay.
as we're looking at these questions, it dawned on me, one of the things we're working on right now as part of the grant application process for the regional early action planning 2.0, the REAP funding efforts. We're planning to do a bus stop and transit train station countywide assessment, and then recommendations for access and other improvements. And I hadn't really thought to include EV charging infrastructure in that, but I think there probably is a good case to be made for doing that, as including as one of the amenities or improvements that we could be making to our transit infrastructure, could be that kind of multimodal aspect of including EV charging as part of that assessment. So I'll look at ways that we might be able to incorporate that in that assessment.
So we recently completed a study for King County Metro Transit where we looked at all of their park and ride facilities and recommended basically, how do you provide charging for the commuters that are using those facilities? And so, that you might want to take a look at that. I assume King County has that available on their website. If not, you can reach out to me. And if it's okay with them, I'd be happy to share it. I don't see why I wouldn't, because it's a public document. And that, what we recommended was basically, we looked at essentially the availability of power at each of their facilities to determine where charging could be added. And you don't need a lot of power because people are parked all day. So you can get by with banks of level 2 charging that use load management, so they can share the power, because they still are going to give each vehicle, they may charge it, 2 kilowatts per hour, but they've got all day, so it doesn't matter. And so that's really, I think, important. Most people that are driving to a park and ride aren't traveling very far anyway. So they may not even need a full charge each day, but it certainly is a very cost-effective way to address range anxiety. So that's just an example. Another example that I'll give is we've developed a concept for an electromobility hub, which is a way that can provide multiple types of mobility service, particularly first and last mile connectors like microtransit and shuttles and even micromobility, as a way for them to charge their vehicles, as well as TNC vehicles like Uber and Lyft, so they can get high power charging while they're picking up and dropping off passengers, as well as doing other services like vacuuming out their vehicles and whatnot while they're doing that. So anyway, just some thoughts.
I love that. I'll definitely look for those examples. I know SCAG, the funder of the REAP funding, is really excited about the mobility hub concept. So if we could integrate that into our project, I think it would be really valuable. So thank you for those.
Sure. Yeah, we do a lot of work for transit as well. And so, as I said in the last call, I think it was one of the calls today, electric vehicles are they the silver bullet? Are they the end all? And I said, yes, as long as they're buses. Okay, we are getting close to the end of our time. Amanda, James, you've been great. You guys have any other thoughts, questions, or suggestions? So we are in the trying to wrap up this analysis. As I mentioned to Amanda earlier, and I'll share that with you, James, as well. What we're doing is we're combining several different sources of data inputs. The first is the social pinpoint data, which is we have the social pinpoint site, which is a way for folks to provide input. This is for stakeholders in the public. Secondly, is these focus groups. Third, we are doing a big data analytics using streetlight origin destination data to look at how to, basically where stops are and where sufficient dwell times are to help cite which types of chargers. And then last but not least are these focus groups and the discussions that we've been having over the last several days with representatives from various different counties and regional agencies within these counties, such as yourselves. You guys have been great and really helpful. Going forward, what we're going to try to do is incorporate this into our next deliverable, which we will then also post on the project's website. Here's the URL for the project website and some of the content. Right now, there's an existing condition study that's up there. We're also posting some other documents very soon. We want to get this basically done by the end of this year so that we can kind of wrap up the project in the spring of 2023. So that's kind of where we're at. Sarkis, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you, Mike, Sarah, and Ilse. We appreciate it. And thank you, Amanda and James.
Of course,
Yes,
thank you for including us. And Mike, you work directly for DKS, or are you a sub?
No, I am the project manager for DKS, and I lead electromobility for DKS.
Thank you. We just recently did a grant writing RFQ and to establish a bench of consultants. And DKS is one of the bench consultants. We haven't done the contracts part yet, but we did the selection and announced it to our commission last month. So I'm really excited to hear about the work that you have done in the micromobility and the mobility hub space. So I'm saying that to keep it fresh in my mind. So when we do the contracts, so thank you.
Well, if I don't mind saying so myself, I'm a pretty good grant writer, actually. I want to electrify the transportation because I want to decarbonize transportation. And so winning grants, supporting clients is something that we take a lot of pride in, and we've been pretty successful. So
awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Well,
all right. Well, I want you guys to not be late for your next meeting, because you're probably like me going to the next meeting one after the other. So thank you for your time today. Thanks for your thoughts, insights, and questions. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye.